So you've been bombarded by the TikTok ads, the Facebook ads, the Instagram ads. Maybe the exact bag you searched for 3 weeks ago suddenly appears in your Instagram reel. And maybe foolishly you even clicked the website. And now you're seeing these damn bags everywhere. There's no escape. The algorithm knows what you like. And then it happens. You buy one. Maybe it was the fact that the sale appears to have been running continuously since the Obama administration. But whatever the reason is, you've done it. You have one sitting in your house. You're carrying it around. You're sniffing it more than is probably socially acceptable. It's got you. But what is it? Crumble cookie? Is Trader Joe's finally opening a location near you? No. It's Portland leather goods. Before we begin, I do have a few completely unnecessary disclaimers that serve no purpose whatsoever except helping me sleep at night. I'm not trying to take down Portland leather goods. I actually really like Portland leather goods and own several of their bags and small leather pouches and what have you that I use regularly. In fact, there's one sitting on my nightstand right now. It's expensive enough to feel special, but not so expensive that I have to explain myself to a financial advisor. And for what they are, I think they're solid bags. They're kind of no frills. There's not a lot of detail. You're not even getting a pocket a lot of times. There's not a lot of hardware, which I appreciate because I really don't like hardware on my bags. I say that because I think it's important to establish this up front, because I'm not approaching this topic as an outsider. I'm not some luxury bag collector looking down my nose at peasants, nor am I a scorned fan trying to get revenge. If anything, I'm reporting from slightly inside the building, which is exactly why I've become fascinated to the culture and dynamic that surrounds this brand. In my mind, the bags themselves aren't actually the interesting part. The interesting part is the ecosystem, the Facebook groups, the drop culture, the colors of it all, the unicorn hunting, the mystery boxes, and on and on and on. The strange emotional attachment that people develop to a company whose primary goal is ultimately to separate them from their money. And the more time I've spent thinking about all of this and observing all of this, the more I found myself asking a question. And that is PLG just a handbag company? I mean, yes, it is, obviously, but has it also accidentally created something that feels cult-like? I feel like the word cult has come into overuse as far as describing things that are just wildly popular and perhaps unreasonably so, but I really can't think of a better word, so here we are. Speaking of cults, let's talk about where this whole thing started. Because like I said, it's not the bags themselves. Because like I said, it's not the basic no-frills tote bags themselves that are super interesting. It's the ecosystem that surrounds them. Now, I know these kinds of videos are contractually obligated to include a section where we trace the founder's journey all the way back to the day that he ate his first fruit snack in second grade. But don't worry, I'm not going to do all that. According to the highly rigorous and academically respected peer-reviewed research methods known as reading a few things online and perusing the PLG website, according to all of that, Portland Leather Goods was founded in 2015 by a man named Curtis Matsko in Portland, Oregon. And just like every startup ever, it began in a garage. At first, he was making simple leather goods by hand and selling them locally and online. But apparently, allegedly, his first product wasn't even a handbag, but a leather journal. I think he started on Etsy, and then over time, demand grew, the company expanded, and what began as like a 1 or 2 person operation eventually became a major direct-to-consumer brand selling bags, accessories, useless pouches, etc. But anyway, these details are not really what's important because this is a pretty standard startup story. Nearly any successful company started in a very similar way. Small business, humble beginnings, rapid growth, millions in sales. Here comes the inspirational guitar music and like the misty-eyed mom telling us all how proud she is of her son's achievements. Anyway, but what's really important is where the company ended up. Today, which I think, probably if you're watching this video, if anybody ever watches it, you probably already know, they are known for their full grain leather, their simple minimalist designs, and perhaps most importantly, an extremely strong online presence with many, many ardent fans. So like I said, the bags themselves, generally solid. They're not luxury, but they're not like bargain basement junk either. Just decent leather handbags at a price point that most people can justify paying. And that's why I think they're so successful. They're attainable. They're not like actual luxury brands. You don't need to be a millionaire. Play a game where you buy candlestick holders and napkin rings before they'll let you purchase one of their bags. In some circles, owning a PLG bag is a little bit of a status marker. Where I live, it's practically the official handbag of women who are somehow simultaneously leaving Whole Foods, a Catholic school pickup line, and like a boutique fitness class, and also of like a woman of a certain age too. I didn't know this, but the brand is popular with, the older gals, and that is no shade. I'm not a spring chicken myself. Plenty of brands have decent products. Plenty of brands have a recognizable aesthetic, but what's interesting to me is what happens after people buy that first bag. Because to me, I think that's where things start getting weird. And this brings me to what I think is the central question of my entire video. And that is, what is it exactly that makes PLG feel cult-like? I know that it's not actually a literal cult. I just want to make that clear. I know it's not an actual cult. Nobody's being asked to surrender all of their earthly possessions, save for one no-frills tote bag, and move to a compound in rural Oregon. That's not what's happening here. I understand that. What I'm talking about are the cult-like dynamics and culture that surrounds the brand. The community, the identity, the belonging, the rituals, the feeling of us versus them, insiders versus outsiders, and perhaps most importantly, the unusual degree of blind loyalty to a company whose primary objective is to make money. And I know I'm not saying anything outlandish here because the company itself has noticed it. In a statement that I am pretty sure is up on their website today still, the founder acknowledges this in a letter to the public. He himself describes the following as cult-like and says that most people can't just purchase one bag. They keep coming back for more and more and more. So he understands, and in fact, not only does he understand, I think he meant that as a obviously he doesn't mean that as a criticism. He's wearing it as a badge of honor. And why wouldn't he? If you're selling handbags, having a customer base that is deeply emotionally invested in your brand is probably about the best possible outcome you could imagine, right? So you've bought your first bag. Congrats. For the overwhelming majority of customers, this is where the story ends. They buy the bag, they carry it, they enjoy it, and they move on with their lives. In fact, that was my relationship with PLG for years, and I fully intended to keep it that way. But if you're anything like me, after you buy something, maybe you spent, I think my first bag was like, all told, like, how much did I spend? Probably like $130 maybe, including shipping. But for some of us, over $100 on a bag, a single purse is not nothing, right? If you're anything like me, you buy the item and you keep researching it long after you have already spent the money. You watch reviews, you search Reddit, you look for validation that you made a good decision. You look for reasons that you made a bad decision, and you reassure yourself and you worry simultaneously. And eventually, during a slow moment, while half watching Lincoln Lawyer, you end up on Facebook. Now, there are several PLG related groups floating around out there, but there is one main group that I think functions as the nucleus of the fandom. And so I'm gonna spend a fair amount of time talking about this group. Technically, it's unofficial, right? But in practice, it really doesn't feel that way. It feels quite official because the group is run by Portland Leather Goods corporate employees, and it serves as the primary place where company announcements, previews, and dropped information is shared. At first glance, there's really nothing all that remarkable about this, except when you get in there and kind of start looking around, it, to me, kind of has the vibe of like a church lock-in where the attendees are only allowed to have the safe, clean fun that the youth pastor approves of. So this group is mostly just a collection of people enjoying bags, bag of the day posts, photos of large collections, questions about leather care, questions about straps, questions about flair, which appears to be, flair is the accepted term for all the jangly shit people hang off their bags. I don't really like it, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that the group has developed its own little culture that really does make it feel very insular. There are acronyms that make no sense to outsiders, references to retired colors, stories about long, discontinued styles, members casually discussing things that sound completely unhinged if you have no familiarity with the brand, and over time the group does develop a shared language and a shared history and kind of a collective memory. And while all of this undoubtedly helps generate hype around the products, I think its more important function is that it creates community. And because I consider this Facebook group to be the beating heart of the fandom, it's also where we can observe some of the more interesting dynamics that surround the brand. Which brings me to the group administrators, who I've already said are corporate employees of Portland Leather Goods. And I'll just say it, the relationship between the administrators and the members is kind of weird. Not bad, not sinister, not nefarious, just weird. The admins seem to function as a kind of bridge between the company and the fandom. They answer questions, interact with members, preview upcoming releases, and generally keep the whole thing running. But because they're company representatives, their answers tend to be very company approved and therefore unhelpful. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with this. I understand that there are things they can't share, information that they cannot divulge. But then it just kind of makes me think, why are you here? Or not why are you here? Why do you need to interact with the fandom at all? Why not just be kind of the silent, unseen hand, approving posts and making sure that everything is kept running smoothly? Do you need to interact? For example, if someone asks, like if a retired color is coming back or a retired style, the answer is usually something like, you never know, wait and see. Which, again, I understand that there's not much they can say a lot of times. And to be fair, it's a friendly answer, but it's not really an answer. Moreover, what you don't see in the group is any kind of criticism. Now, I realize this is a fan group, it's not a customer service or complaints line. I get that. However, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that in a group with over 200,000 members, there would not be a post with a single complaint. That is unrealistic. Every brand has customers who feel disgruntled or scorned for whatever reason, and every company has quality issues and critics. So again, it makes absolutely no sense that we wouldn't be seeing any of this play out in the Facebook group. And the reason for that is fairly obvious in my opinion. Criticism is heavily moderated. So then that is the other function of the group administrators. It is to moderate criticism. I still don't understand why they couldn't do that silently without interacting with folks in a very kind of inauthentic way, but whatever. So when someone does complain, the post is locked and that person is referred to like a special email that is a customer service line, which is odd to me because they do approve posts. They have post approval. So then I don't understand why they would let that post even get through and then lock it. Why wouldn't they just deny it and maybe reach out to that person privately? It looks like they're just trying to like make an example out of that poor soul who dared to ask that question or make that comment. Like, this is what's going to happen to you if you, I don't know. It's odd because they don't have to do that. They're going out of their way to showcase that they've locked the thread. It's strange. On some level, I understand why a company would do this. They want to protect their brand image. However, it creates a very curated reality. A reality everybody's happy, everyone's excited, everyone's buying bags, spending money, and no one has anything negative to say. It creates this kind of weird leather utopia where everyone is positive all the time, and that's not real, and I think that does matter. The healthiest communities are ones where people can talk honestly about the things that they like and things that they don't, and I feel like if I'm a brand owner, that's what I want. I don't want to be known as having to censor criticism to make sure that my brand image stays intact. I want my brand to be good enough to withstand critique. So to me, the fact that critiques are so heavily moderated, I don't think that speaks to strength. I think that speaks to weakness. Another one of the more fascinating aspects of the Portland Leather Goods fandom and community is what I'll call emotional audience buy-in. And what I mean by this is, at a certain point, people stop responding primarily to the product itself and start responding to the feelings that they get about the product. The bags are still what they are. They're still there. But then there's an emotional component that becomes just as important, if not more important, than the items themselves. So the item is like the thing that gets everybody together, but then there's this emotional piece that's also that gets tied in there as well, that I think perpetuates community and it drives sales. If you spend enough time in these Facebook groups, you'll notice a pattern. A new bag isn't just a new bag. It's a reward after a difficult year or some kind of hardship. It's a celebration of retirement. It's a comfort purchase after a loss of some kind. It's a comfort item that accompanies someone to their surgery. It goes with you to dialysis, and then you detail that story in the group. It's a companion during a divorce or job loss or something else, which is fine. There's nothing really inherently wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with sharing those things to a group of like-minded people that you connect with. I just feel like surely we can find more appropriate venues to use as outlets that do not have the ultimate goal of getting you to buy more stuff and line the corporate coffers. At times, the focus seems to shift from here's my cute bag to here's my life story and also a cute bag. And I feel like that maybe reveals something that's important. It could be that people are not looking only for handbags, but that they're also looking for connection. And I don't think that would shock anybody, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. People are looking for fellowship, a place to belong, and that's totally normal. But again, what does strike me as maybe not all the way normal is that this need for community and connection is being fulfilled in a space that exists ultimately to drive sales and encourage consumption. I feel like even when people are sharing these stories and connecting over shared hardships and traumas, all of that attachment eventually creates more sales. I know that sounds really cynical and like perhaps even a little dark, but lest we not forget that that is the corporate backdrop against which all of this is happening. These interactions also contribute to what I think is another important mechanism in this entire ecosystem, and I'm calling that the belonging reinforcement loop. I don't know if these are widely used terms, but this is kind of what I've come up with as I was looking into all of this. An example of the belonging reinforcement loop would be something like this, and I'm going to try to say this as delicately as possible. I've mentioned before that membership in this group appears to skew a little older than I initially expected. Because of the marketing that the company uses, the advertisements, the images in those advertisements, I didn't realize, I guess I thought that, I knew it wasn't like a Gen Z brand. Millennials, I guess is what I would say. 30s, 40s was their target demographic, if I had to guess, based on their marketing material. And before anyone gets defensive, I am not young and sprightly myself. In fact, I'm completely devoid of sprite. But I do think the demographic makeup of the group does matter. And that's the only reason I'm bringing it up. It is not to shame anyone or age shame or anything like that. Many of the group's members, its most devoted fans, appear to be women of a certain age. Many are retirees, grandparents, empty nesters. These are people whose lives look very differently than they may have 10, 20, or even 30 years ago. These are folks who have more free time than they once did. Their social circles have become smaller. They may no longer feel like the target audience for most mainstream brands and marketing. And for obvious reasons, that stage of life can sometimes be lonely. Not for everybody, but for some people. I don't think that anybody would disagree with the fact that life does slow down, in later years. And I feel like for those people, that's kind of what makes these communities so appealing. There's always something going on. There's always someone posting. It's easy to participate. The barrier of entry is very low. At any time of day, you can post your bag, tell a story, engage with other people, and they're fun. It's just a fun time. There's always a new color, a new drop, a discussion, mystery box, bag of the day, whatever, to engage with. And there's always a reason to check back in. I think there are certain people who are particularly vulnerable to this dynamic. The marketing, the sense of the scarcity mindset, the sense of FOMO, all of that. And also, most importantly, the community that accompanies all those things. I don't begrudge anybody that. I completely understand that is a completely valid desire and need to connect with other people. I have no problem with that. My only critique is that the entire system is ultimately tied to consumption. The community part and the shopping experience become inseparable. You have to have purchased at least a bag. You have to have purchased something to really participate in the community to full capacity, right? So it's not like you have to buy something to join the group and get, meaning or enjoyment from it. But that is part of it, buying things, and not just one bag. I would venture a guess that the group's most active participants have multiple bags, many bags, even purseries. New word for me. I didn't know that was a thing. Purseries, where the bags are pleasantly displayed in an array of colors. And so in this way, the social experience and the commercial aspect are inextricably linked. And that's what makes this also fascinating for me. It's because the product, the leather bags themselves, isn't really the product necessarily, it's the community. And I feel like once you build a community that people love, enjoy, and don't want to leave, the handbags, that becomes a given, and that bonding has made it so that the community aspect overshadows the bags themselves. But to keep participating in the way that you might want to, you have to keep buying the bags. You see what I mean? You see how dark this is? And so that brings me to the next piece of the puzzle, which is the drops. So one aspect of the community that I feel does make it especially cult-like is these drops. The use of drops in this context has become common parlance, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what I mean when I say drop culture. If the Facebook group of PLG is the church, then the weekly drop is a Sunday service. Every week, people gather to see what color, styles, and surprises might be appearing on the website. And I say people, but I also mean me. I'm there as well, okay? Every Sunday, they have the weekly reveals or previews, and they preview what will drop in the following week. There's something new every week, okay? Every week there is something new, and it is easy to get caught up in feeling like you need to buy something from every drop. I mean, this is nothing new to anybody. The Coach girls go through this. Probably, I'm sure the Bagoo girls go through this. This is nothing new. People do feel a sense of pressure to buy something every time these items drops. I don't anymore, thank God. I do not feel this pressure. First of all, how many leather bags do I truly need? Okay. But then also, to me, it just becomes like every week, it's a lot. Like, I can't keep up with that, but there are people who do try. These preview posts that the administrators post generate lots of engagement, as you might imagine. People speculate, they strategize, they begin mentally spending money that they don't technically yet have. They start canceling appointments, moving meetings around, determining where they're going to be and what they need to do at the precise moment that their desired item will drop. I get it. It's exciting, especially if this is like kind of your hobby, right? And it's justified. That's what's crazy. Like, depending on the item, things do sell out. Just today, I was a victim of something being sold before I even knew it had dropped on the app. So, that sucks for me. It's fine, whatever. But I imagine that this is what it is like trying to buy Taylor Swift tickets. It truly is kind of a panic situation. Everybody's constantly refreshing. Yeah, what am I saying, everybody? I was refreshing today in vain, really, because I'd already missed it. But there is a frenzy. People are convinced they're going to miss out on the opportunity of a lifetime. And sometimes people do miss out, just like I did today. At the center of all this is one of the pillars of PLG's business models, and that is colors. Unicorn colors, retiring colors, old colors that have come back, colors that are here now that are going to be gone tomorrow, seasonal colors, surprise colors, colors that may never appear again, all of this, right? That's kind of the hook. As you can imagine, colors and to a lesser degree, styles generated a tremendous amount of hype. And before anybody says, well, maybe they simply can't make enough of them to meet demand, allow me to gently point out that scarcity benefits the company a lot. People don't rearrange their schedules, obsessively refresh websites, or treat a handbag release like a lunar eclipse when they know they'll be able to buy the item again. The uncertainty is the point. The possibility of FOMO is the point. The frenzy is the point. And that frenzy brings us to the point of unicorn colors. A unicorn color, generally speaking, is a rare color, a retired color, an extremely limited color, an in-store release only color, or a color that was never officially offered in a particular style. Maybe only a small number was produced. Perhaps it was only available in stores. Maybe it appeared briefly and was vanished. Maybe it appeared only in C sales, which is another thing that I'm not even going to try to get into here. Maybe someone got their hands on a color or style combo that technically was not supposed to exist. Whatever the reason, it becomes a unicorn, and unicorns are very sought after. And once something becomes a unicorn, the rules of normal consumer behavior, they seem to go out the window. They don't apply anymore. Now, again, to be fair, this is not unique to PLG. Every major consumer brand almost goes through something like this. They engineer their own panic, their own FOMO. People lose their minds in the same way. So I'm not saying that customers of PLG are uniquely deranged. I'm not saying that at all. People lose their minds over all kind of stuff. Pokemon cards, Stanley Cups, concert tickets, etc., toilet paper during a national emergency. Humans have always been susceptible to scarcity. This is nothing new. This is just kind of the law of supply and demand. The moment something becomes difficult to get, it becomes extremely desirable. The moment a color or style retires, people convince themselves that they have to have it. PLG did not invent this, but what they have done is build an ecosystem that bolsters it, that amplifies it. PLG creates scarcity through all of these limited releases, retired colors, in-store exclusives, etc. The community then takes that scarcity and transforms it into mythology. People hunt unicorns. They chase retired colors. They spend lots of time researching and browsing websites and aftermarket resale sites and all of this. They pay crazy, ridiculous, unbelievable amounts of money for bags that they probably would not have looked twice at if they were just up on the website available for purchase all the time. And in this way, the company and the fandom create a feedback loop with one another. The company limits availability, the fans panic, the panic increases demand, the increased demand creates more hype, the hype creates more panic, and around and around and around we go. The result being that sought-after colors can disappear in an hour and reappear shortly after on the resale market for prices that I personally find insulting and offensive. And what's crazy is that people pay them. As much as I want to say, like, people shouldn't do this, people shouldn't scalp, it's almost like in some way I really can't fault someone for buying something for the sole purpose of marking it up. I feel like sometimes these customers make themselves targets for that kind of thing. Because if you're telling the market, I have to have this and I'll pay whatever, then why wouldn't someone take advantage of that? The only reason, and this is like a well-trod point, but the only reason that these items are able to go for so much money on the resale market is because there is a proven history that people will pay that price. I'll move on from this now. So the fact that people will pay these prices, that tells me that we're no longer operating in the realm of the thing itself necessarily. Now we're operating in the realm of scarcity, of rarity, of the status of having a super special frou-frou item that few other people could get their hands on. We're talking about belonging, being inside the group and feeling like you have special access to something. I think people are chasing a feeling when they pay $400 for a bag that originally went for $89.95, right? It's the feeling that you get because you know in your mind that you're overpaying, but you do it anyway. This is the inevitable next stage of the PLG life cycle, collecting. Now let me start by saying that there is absolutely nothing wrong with collecting things. Obviously, I have several Portland Leather Goods bags myself. How many do I have? No more than 20 bags collectively. I feel the need to self-report here because I don't want it to seem like I'm looking down from my like my minimalist glass house. That's not what's happening here. People collect all sorts of stuff. Coins, records, sneakers, cards, tiny ceramic frogs, whatever brings you joy. And handbags occupy kind of a strange space because they're both collectible and functional. One handbag, maybe 2 or even 3, is a need, but a pursery is not. But I think we can all agree that there comes a point with any collection where the conversation shifts away from collecting to, why is this person doing this? And obviously there's no universal cutoff. I cannot tell you the acceptable number of bags that's okay, that like is not a problem. But what I can tell you is that I've seen collections containing more bags than a person could realistically use in a lifetime. Entire walls of bags, closets of bags, rooms of bags, called purseries, a term I didn't know existed and frankly wish to unlearn. I've seen people collecting multiple versions of the exact same bag in every color offered, or every color that they could manage to get their hands on. I've seen people openly admit that they owned bags that they've never carried. Now, okay, I wrote this. It's been a little while since I wrote this, and now I'm having to like go back and eat my words here, because I also own bags that I've not many. I think there's only one, and that's because it has a weird smell. And I've seen countless posts from people searching for a specific color or style in order to complete the collection. Now see, that's the phrase that always gets me. It's like, I need such and such color to complete my collection. Then what? Then what are you gonna do? But I think we can all agree that once you're trying to complete a collection, the goal is no longer like utility, like I need a bag for work, or I need a bag to store my charging cables in, or whatever it is. It's not about that whatsoever. It's about just completing it for its own sake, and it's not serving a purpose. The collection, just having the collection, becomes the purpose. Let's say your goal is to complete your collection of snappy flappy pouches in every single color that you could possibly get your hands on. Now, the collecting is not happening if you buy your snappy flappy pouches in the comfort of your own home and nobody ever sees them. That's one thing. You go into your den, you open the door, and you see your collection of 165 snappy flappies, and you close you look around, you admire them, and you close the door again. Nobody ever sees that, right? But that's not what's happening here. These collections are social. I would say that if these Facebook groups did not exist, there would not be the level of hoarding that there is. It is because it is a social activity. Buying your things, buying your bags, showing them off, showing off your collection, that encourages more consumption. And if it weren't for that, I feel like people would not feel as motivated to spend the money that they do on bags that have very limited purpose and utility, truly. Gone are the days where your grandma does not know how to use the internet or take a photo, post it online. Like, that's over. These women are in there, they're snapping pictures, they're posing, they're modeling the bags, they're making videos, they're uploading, like, they're fully in it. It's full on. When this happens, when those posts go up, when the photos of the beautifully organized and staged purseries make it onto the Facebook groups, these posts get lots of engagement, obviously. Enormous engagement. These people, when they post, are getting compliments, admiration, envy. All of this is validation, which just what? You guessed it, encourage them to continue. So, and again, there's nothing wrong with sharing the things you like with people who also like those things. But I do think it normalizes a level of consumption that might otherwise be viewed as excessive. So in these groups, and I'm part of the problem. I'm a part of lots of groups that are like this. One common refrain when people ask if they should buy a certain item or another, people will say, this is the wrong group. We're enablers. We're not going to be able to stop you from doing. We're not the ones to stop you from purchasing that item. I mean, obviously it starts to feel normal, because if you spend enough time looking at collections that contain 50, 75, 100 handbags, eventually you'll become desensitized to these images. You'll become desensitized to the fact that even a small pouch is running you $45 or $50 or $60 in some cases. I myself have kind of gone through this. Like, when I first bought my initial bag, I think I paid like, I don't know, $130 or something all told, like with shipping, maybe a little more. And I thought that was a lot. I was like, God damn, like, that's a lot of money, because I wasn't really like super heavy into bags at that point. I thought that was a lot of money. But 6, 8, 12 months down the road to spend $200-250 on a bag and maybe a pouch or, 2 pouches did not even seem that bad. Like, it just didn't seem that expensive to me at that point. So in that way, when something becomes normalized and starts to feel okay, people are more likely to participate in it, and I am a living example of that. And as I've mentioned, the company itself has very little incentive to discourage this behavior. I mean, because there's some truly obsessive behavior in those groups, and we see the admins step in when they are criticized, right? But we never see them step in to say, like, hey, maybe you don't need to buy that right away, or to express any kind of skepticism about these large purse collections. In fact, if anything, they'll come in and egg it on, right? They have no interest in tamping down on some of this behavior. And why would they? The more engaged people become, the more the overconsumption feels normal, the more they buy. The more they buy, the more they post. The more they post, the more other people buy, and on and on. This twisted train continues down the tracks. I don't think most people set out with the intention of becoming collectors or purchasing an unreasonable number of bags and or small leather goods. And I'm going to use myself as an example here. When I purchased my one bag, I thought, I purchased it and I moved on with my life, as you're supposed to do. And I now have many more than just one bag. I have several small goods from the company. I don't have a pursery, and I don't have more bags than will fit on my 2 bedposts. But it was more than I ever anticipated that I would buy. Totally understand. And really, I think the only thing that really limited me from buying more was my budget. Because I'm not spending my retirement savings on bags. So if it weren't for that, if I just had a lot more disposable income, who knows how many, maybe I would have a pursery right now. Maybe my daughter's room maybe she'd be sleeping on the couch and her room would be a pursery. Who knows? I imagine most customers buy their first bag because they actually want or need a bag, and that's it. That's normal. That's reasonable. I would hazard a guess that few people wake up one morning and think to themselves, you know what I'd really like? To eventually own 150 handbags and spend my evenings hunting retired shades of blue leather on Facebook. And also 85 small leather pouches. And yet somehow, for a subset of the community, I'm not saying this is everybody. There are some people, there are many people on there who are able to spend and consume reasonably. But for a small number of people in the community, that's exactly where they end up. And I know that because there are constant what they call de-stashes, which is exactly what it sounds like. People admitting to themselves in the community that they have too much shit and they're looking to offload it. So there are plenty of people who will readily admit, I've overspent, I've collected too much, I need to get rid of some of this, and good for them. So how does someone go from buying a single handbag to building an entire identity, at least in part, around their handbags? And I think the answer has a lot to do with the culture we've been talking about the entire time, this culty nature, right? And I think that's the question circling around this entire video. How does it go from I need a bag, something to carry around my daily items, to I have something called a pursery? I think what happens is, they buy the bag because they need a bag, as I did. They discover the community, yikes, and then they kind of become indoctrinated. I was going to say, is indoctrinated too strong a word? I don't think it is. They become indoctrinated. They become intoxicated with the culture, the drops. They become threatened by FOMO. And before long, they're participating in an entire ecosystem that exists around mid-range leather bags. And before I end this video, I want to be fair. Despite all of my joking, the community is generally one of the more positive brand communities that I've encountered online. Most people are kind, most people are supportive, and they're simply enjoying a hobby and connecting with others who share that hobby. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I think the reason this phenomenon is so interesting is because it isn't so obviously toxic. You go to the Facebook group and you just see people interacting pleasantly with each other. I think the dark undercurrent is very easy to miss if you were not already kind of suspicious and cynical. In that way, I think that the positivity, the toxic positivity, as we've come to call it, is kind of a shield that protects the brand from criticism. It protects and preserves people's buying habits from any scrutiny. Like, you really can't, there's no room to question anybody's consumer behavior on there. And that's how they like it. And why wouldn't they? It serves them to do that. It also makes it, I feel the toxic positivity, the element of, why can't I speak? The element of toxic positivity also acts as a shield that makes it difficult, if not impossible, to acknowledge that some of these behaviors on display in the group, they just aren't healthy. They're not healthy. That's something that's not only perpetuated by the group's administrators, it's perpetuated by other members. Other members work to preserve and protect these behaviors, this culture, this dynamic. A common refrain is, well, if you don't like it, then don't buy. Or if you don't like it, don't come here. No one's telling you have to post, or no one's telling you just scroll on by, they'll say. So people are very protective of the things that they feel their identities are connected to. And so it's not like the brand even has to be the driving force of that, because the other members, the customers, will do it for them. In part 2, I want to talk about what the community produces. The brand warriors, the blind and unconditional loyalty, the people who defend the company as though they're defending somebody in their family, the reluctance to question the brand even when criticism is warranted, the weird us versus them mentality that occasionally emerges whenever a competing leather company enters the chat. I also want to talk a little more about the resale economy and what that looks like with PLG, because I've been in resale, like, I have done my share of reselling, and I've never seen anything like what happens in the PLG resale economy and ecosystem, okay?